Hello and welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. Big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. I'm your aptly named host. We're live from the Foundation Center in New York City. It's our third show in residence here at the Foundation Center on Foundation Center Month on Nonprofit Radio. Oh, I'm glad you're with me. I'd suffer the embarrassment of microchilia if you lipped off with the idea that you missed today's show. Building relationships with family foundations. Family foundations can be outstanding funders and partners for your nonprofit, but how do you get started when they say, we contribute only to pre-selected organizations? How do you start and steward a strong relationship? On our third show in Foundation Center Month, our guests are a foundation expert, a foundation executive director, and a foundation grantee. They're Susan Shiroma from the Foundation Center, Stuart Post with the Meringoff Family Foundation, and Danielle Guindo at Reed Alliance. We'll take audiences from our questions, and we'll take questions from our audiences as well. We have live audience. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for being here in the studio. And we have our YouTube audience. Hello, YouTube. Thank you for being with us on the live stream YouTube. Your questions are welcome as well. You just put them into the comments, and we will see them, and we will answer them. On Tony's Take Two, a little more on Foundation Center Month. We're sponsored by Pursuant, full-service fundraising, data-driven and technology-enabled. Tony.ma/Pursuant with a capital P. Wegner CPAs, guiding you beyond the numbers, WegnerCPAs.com. By Telos, turning credit card processing into your passive revenue stream. Tony.ma/TonyTelos. And by Text to Give, mobile donations made easy. Text NPR to 444-999. I'm excited to introduce our guests. I love this. Seated next to me is the Senior Social Sector Librarian at the Foundation Center. Susan Shiroma has been here since 1995. She's at S. Shoroma, and the Foundation Center is at FDN Center, a lot of which is her on that Twitter stream. In May 2005, she gave an inexperienced speaker and fairly new consultant, me, a very early break. She invited me to present planned giving at the Foundation Center, 2005. I was very grateful. I've spoken here about 10 times through the years, and now here we are working together on Foundation Center Month on Nonprofit Radio and Nonprofit Radio Month at the Foundation Center. So thank you.
I love
Remain
you, Tony.
grateful. Oh, thank you, Susan.
What if I me to cry?
He's the executive director of the Meringoff Family Foundation. Before Meringoff, Stuart Post was senior program officer at Brooklyn Community Foundation, overseeing the arts, human services, and workforce development portfolios. He's worked at Brooklyn Museum and in the Brooklyn Borough President's Office. Stuart chairs the board of Brooklyn Community Bail Fund, and he lives in Queens. No, no, that's not true. He lives in Brooklyn Heights.
Brooklyn's in the house.
Danielle Guindo has almost 20 years of nonprofit experience. She was appointed executive director of Reed Alliance in July. She manages Reed Alliance's collaborations with schools throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City that benefit more than 1,500 children each year. She and Stuart should be holding hands. Reed Alliance is a Meringoff grantee. They're at readalliance.org and at Reed Alliance. Join me in welcoming our panel, please. All right, Susan Shiroma.
Oh my goodness.
Tell me what Senior Social Sector Librarian, what's a workday like for a Senior Social Librarian, Senior Social Sector Librarian?
Okay, so I basically spend at least 40 hours a week helping people and organizations find money. It's a real super privilege.
Helping them how? How are you doing this?
Well, you're at Foundation Center today. This is an example of our flagship library. Anybody can walk in off of Wall Street, and we will help you find grants. We're going to teach you about the philanthropic infrastructure here in America and abroad. We have a network of libraries that do that.
The philanthropic infrastructure, that means finding money.
Yeah, as in when you come in here and say, I need $2 million to fund my dream, we're going to start asking you questions about your dream. And before you leave, you're going to have a sense of where that money could come from, and you'll have a very good sense of how to find it. So we do this actually one-on-one in our libraries, and we also work with you online. We have a wonderful Ask Us online library feature. So there's no excuse for anybody with a smartphone or a computer, access to the internet. Instead of calling our receptionist up, you can hit us up through our chat service, and we will work with you basically Monday through Friday from 9:30 to 5 o'clock. So we let you get into your offices, and then by 9:30 in the morning, you should have some fundraising questions on your mind.
You should be talking to the foundation.
We want you to be talking to us. I can stay online with you for an hour and a half, or you can ask me 100 questions a day. So no question is too odd for us.
Okay, and the one-on-one is outstanding. You can come here or to any of the, they're not called coordinating library. What are they called throughout the country?
Funding Information Network Partners.
You can go to any of the Funding Information Network partners throughout the country, which you can find at foundationcenter.org, and they will help you. They will sit side by side with you and teach you how to use their software, show you how to do the searches. It's really incredible. When she says one-on-one, it is. It's not, they don't hand you a manual and send you off. And you can use their premier product, Foundation Directory Online, for free here or at any of these centers throughout the country.
Yeah,
and get help on how to use it. And like Susan said, you will walk out with a lot more information about where potential grants could come from than you had when you came in. So check out Foundation Center.
Yeah,
it's an outstanding resource.
When you don't have time to talk to people, you can use our website. We must have over 20 various web properties these days, so there's something for everybody.
Thank you. Hey, Stuart, you want to tell us a little about Meringoff Family Foundation?
The Meringoff Family Foundation is about 10 years old. It was created by a successful, generous New Yorker who made his, Stephen Meringoff, my boss, who made his money in New York and wanted to give back to New York. And the focus is on public school students, mostly working with youth development programs. And basically, it's an opportunity for us to help level the playing field. And we feel very strongly that what we're trying to do with our grant making is to change lives. We do about $3.5 million a year. I don't know if we're big enough to change the world, but for $3.5 million, we can change an awful lot of lives. And it seems like that personal focus is appropriate for a family foundation because we really are truly a family foundation. Family foundations come in all shapes, sizes. There are some that involve the 5th or 6th generation of the founder. I'm working with a living donor. I'm working with a living donor who has decided opinions about where the funding should go. I'm working with that donor's 4 daughters. And it's really, truly a family affair. In 2, 3, 4 generations, it might look very different, but now it's very exciting to work with the people who created this and, frankly, help them shape what we're all working on together.
Thank you. All right. And Read Alliance is a grantee of the Meringoff.
No, it's not.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Take note. No, but Stuart and I have worked closely together, actually.
From all the information I was given, it's a grantee. So I think there's something good coming.
My programming, that I've led in my previous roles at other organizations have been supported by the Meringoff Family Foundation. And so Stuart Post and I have developed a relationship that we can talk about today over the course of that time that hopefully will continue. Now that I'm at Read Alliance, which is an organization dedicated to leveling the playing field in educational equity. And we do that through improving the trajectory of underserved early elementary students, public school students mainly, but we also serve students in a small portion of Catholic schools and charter schools. We do that through the power of team leadership, providing individual one-on-one tutoring in foundational reading skills. And so what we're doing is providing meaningful after-school employment for nearly 1,000 teens in high schools in New York City across all 5 boroughs that work individually after school and over the summer with more than 1,000 early elementary students, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, across all 5 boroughs. And we've shown over the 18 years of our existence that this works. The power of pairing a near-peer tutor with a younger student has been tremendously impactful. And so we know that more than 85% of all the early elementary school students who have participated in our program improve their reading level by more than 1 grade level. And that's only in 3 months. Our programming is very finite. We perform that programming in 45 sessions. And so in 3 months, we make a tremendous amount of movement. And as one of the largest employers of teens in New York City, I find that to be incredibly monumental, because there's no way one works without the other. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very proud to be now leading an organization that works with these 2 very important constituencies.
Yeah, Danielle, we're gonna start to go broader, okay? And we'll have a chance to talk about your programs as we go.
Very good.
I want to turn to Susan because family foundations. Yes, you'll need the mic. Family foundations can be enormously generous to the nonprofit grantees, potential grantees, but we're here to talk about getting this relationship started and keeping the relationship going. So for the nonprofits that are a little nervous about approaching foundations or don't really know how to get started, you're coaching people 9:30 to 5, 5 days a week, you said, and I believe you. What are some of the top questions you get, frustrations you hear? How can we help people get started in a process that may be a little off-putting to them or discouraging to them, even if they've already tried and haven't been successful?
Okay, so the first thing is, how many foundations are there in the U.S.? Who's out there who we're ignoring in terms of asking for money? So we have 140,000 grant makers in Foundation Directory Online Professional this week. Like 2 hours ago, I checked, and there were 96,379 independent foundations. So if we looked at family foundations, this is the group that we're talking about today. I'm going to guess that by next Thursday, when we update our product, Foundation Directory Online Professional, and this is actually a homework assignment for everybody in the room, sometime towards the end of next...
We didn't advertise there was going to be homework. Now, don't be
no homework.
Don't be an anarchist.
Okay.
There's no homework.
All right, no homework. But by next Thursday, I'm going to be able to look into our database, and I'm making a little pledge to myself that I'm going to guess that out of the 96,379 independent foundations, that something like 40 to 50% of them I will discover to be family foundations. These foundations are difficult for us to get to as prospect researchers. If we look at the entire pool of foundations, we know 90% of them don't have websites. So for those of you who are Googling to find foundations to support your work, it absolutely doesn't work like that, because 90% of foundations don't have websites. Yeah. And we have a National Center for Family Philanthropy in the US. One of their surveys said that 77% of family foundations don't have websites. So family foundations are difficult to get to. You have to do the research to figure out who's in your neighborhood. You also have to know who's got the money in your neighborhood, whether that's a neighborhood in New York or the whole west coast of the US. You have to know who's got a family foundation. They are difficult to get to. Okay, many of them say pre-selected.
So how do we start to do this research?
Okay, so you're going to figure out who you know in the community. You're going to ask your board members to help you. You're going to ask your favorite friends in the fundraising community and the nonprofit management community to help you. I would recommend running a search in Foundation Directory Online. Who gives to arts in New Jersey? Who gives to food banks in Southern California or in one particular neighborhood in Los Angeles? Then you're going to ask yourself, do you know any of these trustees, officers, and donors? Do you know any of the employees of these family foundations? If you're using our product, I'm going to recommend you turn your LinkedIn account on. There's no excuse for any of us these days not to have over 500 people we know on LinkedIn. If you're using our product and you have your LinkedIn account turned on, you will know immediately if you know or you know somebody who can introduce you to somebody on the board of one of these family foundations. So it's about who you know. It's about targeting your research correctly. I came with paper today.
Which let me tell you,
which has like over 100 tips on how to get to know these family foundations.
Let me give you, after 8 years of doing it, let me give you a little host inside,
keep it to 30
a
seconds
podcast
or less.
inside tip. Guests never read the papers they bring. You see how many times, you know the stuff off the top of your head. You see how many times you've referred to the paper? 0.
I should stop touching it.
Just a little podcaster pro tip. Don't worry if your guests bring paper, because they're not going to look at it. But it's comforting. I know it's comforting. It's reassuring, right?
Good. I do biographical histories on people who run foundations. I look at their family members. I find out who's I'm dealing with. I try to look at philanthropic track records. So by the time and I don't really recommend, I'm not supposed to recommend family foundations who I know like 75% great prospects to you, but I'll lead you most of the way there. So you have to do enough research on the family members, the rest of the trustees and officers. You have to know whether or not you fit into their philanthropic pattern of giving. So
that's key. I'm going to stop you there.
That's absolutely key.
Okay, Stuart, do you still get a lot of inquiries, even though you contribute only to pre-selected organizations? Do you still get inquiries that are off topic and not pre-selected?
Things come in over the transom all of the time. People reach out all of the time. And actually, just to back up to what Susan was saying, I would, rather than go to family members, now again, we're a staffed foundation. I'm the only staff member. If there's a staff person, always try to get to the staff person rather than to the trustees. If there is no staff, then the trustees are your only choice. But I would suggest that the point of entry is other grantees. And if you have a relationship with any of the funded organizations of a given family foundation, reach out to them and say, hey, what can you tell me about the Meringoff Family Foundation or this guy, Stuart, who runs it? I would say everything that hasn't come in through family members has come in through other grantee partners and of our current grantee partners. And because we have really nice relationships and ongoing relationships with our grantee partners, when Danielle reaches out to me and says, and she's done it many times, and
too many? Are you saying too many?
No, not
okay.
at all. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
It's really welcome because she's a practitioner. She's the expert. I'm not. I've learned a thing or two or three about youth development practices over the years, but I'm not the one doing the work. Danielle and her colleagues are the ones doing the work. And because Danielle and I, will talk more about this, have a very sort of even-planed relationship, when she reaches out to me and says, hey, there's this group doing great work and I think you'd enjoy meeting them, I listen. And as long as there's something that I see as a potential fit, it's very easy to have coffee with somebody. It's very easy to have a phone conversation with somebody. If I get something totally over the transom that doesn't have Danielle's name or other grantee partners, and I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head who've done this and we've gone on to fund their organizations. But if I get a cold inquiry, if it's something that's a fit, I will respond and say, this is what we do, to tease it out a little bit more.
Okay, we're going to go to Danielle in a sec. But what's your advice for making that cold inquiry?
Just be direct. A real pet peeve of mine, and Susan and I were talking about this earlier, is folks who might reach out to me from my previous life at Brooklyn Community Foundation, where I funded arts programs. It was a very different grantee partner pool. And it will be, oh, hey, Stuart, would love to get together with you. And these are folks who I haven't heard from in years. And it's like, oh, is it about the Meringoff Family Foundation? Because if it is, this is what we fund. I don't necessarily see a fit with what you're doing. If I'm wrong, let me know, and I'd love to get together. And invariably, I never hear from those people again.
All right, so you prefer honesty.
Oh, absolutely.
Stuart, love to get together with you to talk about our work and how I think it fits with Meringoff
funding. It's my job to talk about programming, even if we end up not funding something or if something's not quite the right fit. It's a learning opportunity for me. Knowledge is power. The more I know about what's out there, the better a grant maker I'm going to be. And don't pretend that you want to ask about, how are you, what's going on in your life, when you really want to talk about grant making. I'm here to talk about grant making, and I'm here to find the right partnerships for us.
Okay.
So.
All right. Danielle, your advice about, oh, she's got one. Yeah.
You have one, sorry.
Stuart, I'm going to give you a chance to practice the phrase "quite the right." That seems you stumbled on that. So quite the right, quite the right. You want to just practice that one? Quite the right. Yeah, the phrase. Yeah, the one. When you were talking, you.
Did I say quite the right?
You tried.
Oh.
You tried
okay.
twice.
Quite the right.
There you. Okay, I knew. Okay. Advice on honesty. I'm sure you agree with Stuart, right? Honesty is best.
Always agree.
Be straightforward. But how about the? Well, let's talk about, and this is an ideal opportunity. Yeah. Those first couple of inquiries that you approach Stuart, or others. What's your advice to your peers?
Well, honesty, transparency, number one. If you're working at an organization, whether you're the executive director or in some sort of a fundraising role, you should believe very strongly in what you're doing. So that's going to come through, and I think that's always served me well in any role that I've been in. When I'm selling, so to speak, an organization or the work of an organization, if I don't believe in it, it's going to sound inauthentic, and no matter how much you try, people will be able to see that. So that's number one. But number two, absolutely, be direct and be honest. I think one of the first things that I learned early on as a professional in the nonprofit sector, and I've had roles in development and in program, which often at small to mid-sized nonprofits also means fundraising, is recognizing that if you're talking to someone who works at a foundation, a family foundation or otherwise, their job is to provide funding, right? So don't worry about the ask. They're used to it. That's their job. So get over it.
Without you, we're nothing. Seriously.
That's excellent. Yeah. So say a little more.
Yeah.
You're the ones doing the work. It's our jobs to fund that work and to identify that work. And I welcome the opportunity to learn about new things. Now, obviously, everything's not a fit, but again, that knowledge is power. And we get to approach our work. This is going to sound like a shameless commercial, but we approach our work with a profound respect for what you're doing and really try to keep the hoop jumping, which is unfortunately endemic to the foundation application process. We keep that to a real minimum, and we replace it with an ongoing relationship. And when I'm working with what we call Gen 2, the 4 daughters who each have a relatively small grant-making pool that initially I worked very closely with them on it. Now it's been 5 years. They've really been wonderful students and have very decided opinions about what they want to do. So it's a little bit less hands-on, but my main piece of wisdom, if you will, to impart to them is the relationship begins with the check. It's an ongoing relationship. And as a small family foundation, it's my job to maintain that relationship and bring in the family members as appropriate. And the family members are very, very interested in becoming part of that relationship.
Let's see if we have any questions. Any live stream questions? Anything?
No direct questions from the live stream, but we do have some good comments. Someone says, outstanding tip to talk to donees that are already funded. And another commenter here is saying,
shout the person. What's the person's screen name? Say it again.
The organization Pen Parentis is writing
Thanks,
that
Mom.
compliment. And we have Amy Latoris Rios, who thanks
Stuart
you
sings
all.
also. He's going to be singing later. It's amazing. He's here all week.
They say, this is an unbelievable resource. Thank you so much. So keep these candid tips coming, I guess.
Awesome. We do have a question. Wait for the mic to come to you, please.
Thank you. This is wonderful. And I have 2 questions, if I may.
Start with one, and then we'll see if there's others. We're very
sure.
egalitarian on nonprofit radio.
All righty. If that's the case, then do you have a preference in the initial outreach, email or phone?
Oh, email, always. Always.
All right, can I ask the second one?
That was an easy one. Go ahead.
Okay, the second one is, and this is, I was a bit of a surprise of going to a current funder because I've always had the fear that if I introduce somebody else to a funder, there's a finite amount of money. Am I eating into the pot that I'm trying to get more money down the road?
Yeah. Am I introducing you to my competition?
Yes.
We're in a funny position that we're not endowment-based. If we were endowment-based, I could say that we're spending $3.412 million this year, not a penny over. We're not. I'm actually very proud of the fact that when I joined the foundation 5 years ago, at exactly this time of year, so it was towards the end of the calendar year, and we're on a calendar year, the giving was about 1.6 million. Basically, my job is to foster these relationships and report back to the family about the cool stuff that's happening. And I report back to the family in a very sophisticated way through texts and semi-blurry photographs that I take with my cell phone and forward on in relatively real time about the cool stuff that's happening. There's so much cool stuff happening. So
I guess it would depend on the foundation then. I mean, if they were an endowment-based foundation and they had if they had a capped spend each year, then you would be introducing your. So it's going to depend on the foundation.
From my perspective.
So do the research again. You'd be able to tell that by doing your research. What type of foundation is it?
It also is to the point of this discussion. It is all about the relationship. So I've done that with Stuart because I knew that's not going to jeopardize my relationship with him or the funding that I had secured from the Meringoff Family Foundation. I knew that because we have this equal kind of relationship where I'm able to have those conversations with him. There are other foundations where I would never have thought to introduce someone else as a potential grantee or as someone, and it also is very discreet in that, as you all know, we can't do our work without partners. And so anyone that I have introduced as a potential, of interest would be someone who may have supported and enhanced the work that they were funding, which I thought is an important point to make.
And I would just like to clarify, we've come to the figure of $3.5 million. That's something that we're very comfortable with. So I don't want to present this as like, oh yeah, send me everything. We want to review everything out there, because the truth is we're comfortable at the $3.5 million level. But because it's not endowment based, there's always room for another $25,000 grant here or there. Is there room for another $25,000 grants? Of course not. But within the loose-ish budget that we're working within, we're comfortable with that amount, but it gives us some wiggle room.
Okay. We can take more questions after a short break. We've got to take a break. I got to do a little business for our sponsors. Pursuant. They have a new ebook, and it is Fast Nonprofit Growth, Stealing from the Startups. They take secrets from the fastest growing startups and apply those methods and practices to your work in your nonprofit. It's free, like all the Pursuant resources are. It's on the listener landing page, which is at tony.ma/pursuant, with a capital P for please. Wegner CPAs. There's a new accounting rule on how you account for each contribution, came in the tax law. You have to decide whether it's a contribution or an exchange transaction. What the heck does that mean? What's beautiful is you don't have to know what it means, because Wegner CPAs is on top of it. That's what you want your CPAs to be doing. You can read about it. It's on their blog. And then talk to the partner at Wegner who's been a guest on the show a couple of times, Yeet Uchtum. The place to get started is you go to wegnercpas.com. Telos for credit card processing. I've been reading testimonials from nonprofits that have referred businesses to Telos, and those organizations are now getting a long stream of passive revenue. I've also been reading testimonials from businesses that are using Telos for their credit card processing, and they're very satisfied. So my suggestion is think of the businesses that are supporting you now. Think of businesses that are perhaps run by your board members, family members, and as I said, other businesses that are supporting you. Would they consider switching to Telos for their credit card processing? The way to get started, watch the video, which is at the listener landing page, tony.ma/TonyTelos. I get my name in there often. You notice that? Text to give. It's like texting friends. There's no keywords to memorize. Text to give has a conversation with your potential donors. It's conversational, and they lead them to the gift for your organization. It's very simple. It's affordable. This is not one of the expensive services. You don't need to be a techie, because Text to Give will walk you through the process for setting it all up so that you can have this conversation with your donors. Now's a good time to have your phone. You got your phone handy? You text NPR to 444-999. NPR to 444-999. And it's time for Tony's Take Two. It's Foundation Center Month, Nonprofit Radio. As I said earlier, it's our third week. We're going to wrap it up next week. Stuart said before we started off camera, off mic, we're in residence. I like that. I love it. Nonprofit radio in residence at the Foundation Center. You can come back for next week. We're going to be talking about data-driven decision making, and our Foundation Center expert is going to be Grace Sato. And if you're in the audience here, you can meet Grace because she's in the back. She's going to be with us next Friday as we wrap up. But so grateful to the Foundation Center for having nonprofit radio in residence here for the month. I love it. Thank you. And special shout out again to Susan, who was so willing to work with me since January to get this done. Thank you. Okay, we're going back. We're going back to our panel. Susan Shiroma, she's the social sector librarian, senior social sector librarian. Don't cut her short. Been here since 1995. That's Susan Shiroma. And Stuart Post, executive director of the Meringoff Family Foundation, and Danielle Guindo, executive director at Reed Alliance. Okay, Danielle, we were with you.
Yes.
We were talking about breaking the ice, doing the research, making the recommendations. What other advice do you have for your peers?
Did I mention tenacity?
Many. Yes, Stuart said many, right?
Tenacious. Oh, Tenacious D.
That's me.
Tenacious D.
I like that.
Tenacious
That's me.
D.
I'm, the kind of person, and I think in order to be a fundraiser, you have to be the kind of person that hears a no and thinks no right now, but that's a yes later, or no right now, tell me how it can be a yes later. I would just caution everyone to, who's making an ask, if you hear a no, do not get discouraged. It's an important relationship to start. And even if you do get a no, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop communicating altogether. Just like Stuart had mentioned, he's gotten, folks who have reached out and said, oh, we're interested in talking with you about such and such a program, but it doesn't entirely fit what the parameters are of what his priorities are at this point. And then that's it. They disappear into the ether. There isn't even any follow-up. And so to the extent—
Things change.
And things can change. And to the extent you can continue to keep folks in the loop, I'm a big believer in letting folks know what the news is, put them on your mailing list, make sure they're invited to things, even if it's slightly outside the scope of what they might be interested in doing or supporting or attending, let them decide. But they will never know unless you tell them.
And Danielle, that's consistent with individual fundraising too.
Sure.
When you approach someone, you've asked someone for a gift.
For sure.
Maybe you asked them for $50,000 and they gave you $5,000. That doesn't mean you cut them off. Or even if whatever you asked them for, they gave you nothing. I say to clients, 6 no's and we're halfway to a yes. So that tenacity applies to your individual fundraising. It's parallel if we're talking about a family foundation or any institution. A no doesn't mean no forever, as Stuart is suggesting, and you still keep talking to people. You don't cut off your individual donors when they've turned you down. Don't cut off your institutions.
I would say that if you're the kind of person that is a social person and you like to build relationships and you like to keep up contact with folks and you're good at keeping up your network, that's a natural, right? That will naturally fit within the scope of what you normally do. And if you're authentic and you believe very strongly in what you're promoting, then that's also a natural. That's not too big of a lift. And that's what it takes to really knock down some doors.
And genuinely thanking people can work wonders. In another hat, I'm the board chair of an organization, and somebody that we didn't know from Adam gave a very nice gift of $10,000.
Let's shout it out. Brooklyn Community Bail Fund.
Brooklyn
right?
Community Bail Fund. She had given $10,000 and got the pro forma, thank you so much, but it was somebody that we didn't know who it was. So as board chair, I sent a handwritten note or an email, I forget which, saying, very personal, we really appreciate this, and Stuart Post, board chair. She reached out. The executive director and I had coffee with her. She had given a check to a similar organization where she only got the pro forma thank you. It turned out that we got another $90,000.
Wow.
It was, and she was so touched by our having made that additional outreach. People want to be thanked, and people want to be thanked genuinely. And this harkens back to what we were talking about earlier. These are all about relationships. People who work at foundations are relationships, are people, people who support your organizations are people, and everybody wants to be recognized, not in a smarmy, sycophantic way, but in a genuine, hey, we really appreciate your help. And that happens relatively rarely.
And it doesn't matter the size of the gift either. I
Absolutely
think
not.
it's important to remember that if you have, especially family foundations, individuals that are supporting your work, you might have some at the level of 5,000, whether it's because that's just the level that they fund or that's what they can do at that time, or at 50,000 because that's what they could do at that time. Each one is important to you being able to accomplish your goals, and so an invite. As many invites as possible to things that they might like to see. An invite to an event where you can simply just celebrate with them or showcase some of the other work that you do, even if it's not directly related to what they were supporting, because that's part of the relationship building. You want them to feel like they're part of your extended family. And that's how I think about the work that we do and the relationships we have.
The family.
It's an extended family.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't do what we do without that support.
And could you talk, I'm taking over your job now.
Yeah, another anarchist. 2 anarchists and one
Danielle.
guest.
Yes.
Could you talk about what the initial funding relationship, the genesis of your initial interaction with the Meringoff Family Foundation was, how that got started, and how it led from organization to organization to maybe another organization?
Maybe. Yes, so if I remember correctly, I believe the executive director of an organization that I had worked at previously had been on the board with Stephen Meringoff of another organization. They served on the board of directors of another organization.
So reaching out to a trustee.
Right, and just through that relationship building, learned that he had a family foundation and what some of his interests may have been, and invited him to events to meet the constituents of the program that we thought he'd be interested in funding. And he was taken by it. It was actually a young men's responsible fatherhood program. And we had a number of the young men from that program at our annual gala that year, and invited him to meet with them. And he talked to them. They had a very intimate conversation. I think that was the only reason why he was there. He's a very mission-driven person, and he was very impressed. And from there, I think Stuart and I, we probably took it over.
We hashed out the details.
We talked about the details. You observed, I mean, one of the things that I do love about working with Stuart and the Meringoff Foundation is he means it when he says that they are very interested in how the program runs and what's actually happening on the ground. So the questions that Stuart asked and the observations that he made on the site visits prior to funding the program and after the program had been funded were not only helpful, but also insightful. He understood enough about what makes the program work that they were helping us think further down the road about how to make it even better.
Danielle, I'm gonna stop because you made me think of something that
I thought this was my interview.
I think is Stuart Post. It's the Stuart Post Nonprofit Radio. You'll see a rebranding next week, so come back to Stuart Post Nonprofit Radio. We'll have to scrap this the backdrop, but we'll just exit out. If we have trouble, if things are not going the way we anticipated they would in the program that you're funding, what's your advice?
Tell me.
As soon as we know.
Don't wait.
Stuff happens. and we understand that stuff happens. And if anything, that's going to make me respect an organization more and make Stephen, my boss, respect an organization more, because there's that level of trust that we can say, you know, this didn't come out the way we thought it would be. And I'll not infrequently have gotten emails from people saying, you know, could we slightly redirect this because what we thought wasn't working. I mean, a proposal is a best guess. And sometimes best guesses go great, and sometimes they don't. And that's fine. I mean, not everything is going to be a home run, but by having, you know, that ongoing relationship where there's trust, which there's comfort, and it also helps that I'm a staff person. It's, you know, I can get into the weeds much more frequently than the family members who have their own lives and their own jobs and their own careers, and they're busy people. So it's my job, though, to get into those weeds, to be having those conversations, and to be bringing in the family as appropriate. And of course, I'm always bringing in the family because it's not my money.
Let's make something explicit, which is, you know, if you're not honest and you try to conceal it, you're going down a rabbit hole that is only going to be, it's going to be discovered, it's going to be a disaster and a crisis, versus you've got a problem, share it with your partner, we're partners in this, the relationship. Share it, right?
The biggest frustration of doing philanthropy, and philanthropy is a great gig. It's a wonderful, wonderful privilege to get to do this work, to go into communities that aren't my own, to see the exciting things that are happening all over New York City. Well, I actually just, my mind totally
don't
just
be
went blank.
Don't be deceitful and dishonest.
Yes, yeah, it's.
See, it's a good thing. I'll help you through, Stuart. I know it's a new hosting gig.
You know what? I guess I shouldn't be.
It's a new hosting gig for you.
Job.
I understand. Don't be dishonest. That's what we're.
Absolutely.
But I think that also ties back to the other point that I have made before and a couple of times, which is the authenticity, right? The transparency. If you believe that what you're doing is meaningful, if you know that you're doing the best job possible, the work we do is really hard, and it's our job also to relay what some of those honest, real challenges are to funders, so that they understand what you're up against. And that means that the best guess that you propose, which I love that, sometimes doesn't always come to fruition in the timeline that you imagined or you projected. And having the conversation, the relationship, is important to making sure that you maintain that trust and continue that relationship.
I want to see if we have, looks like we do have some questions. I have to, okay, we have questions online too? Awesome, okay. William, you got to go live. I mean, go broad. Would you? I want to, because Stuart said the word philanthropy. Give us the wide shot, please, because I have to introduce the bear over here. I got questions about our bear last week. A few people asked, "What's the bear in the corner?" That's Phil. Phil Anthropy, I believe, is that's the foundation. That is not my. I wish that was my gig or my thing. It's not my bit. I do stand-up comedy. Phil Anthropy is not my bit. But that's Phil in the corner. Welcome, Phil. Okay, so we have a couple. Let's go online. Wait, let's do an online question. You got something on YouTube.
All right. Our question online is, how can a nonprofit discover whether a family foundation has a staff or if it's only run by family members and trustees?
Let's give that to Susan.
Was that a plan? Do we have the name of the organization where that question came from?
Out. Yeah, who was that?
That was Penn Parentis again, who's
Parentis,
a
very active. Okay.
loyal devotee to Foundation Center resources, by the way.
Yay, okay. So the question was, when you're researching foundations and you think you're dealing with a family foundation, how do you find out if there's staff members? All right, so if you are using my favorite tool, which is Foundation Directory Online Professional, and I have to put a plug in here for another tool that we produce that you can use free of charge at any of our Funding Information Network partners, Foundation Maps. So for those of you who do not like to read text, Foundation Maps is a mapping tool that will literally show you who's giving money to Brooklyn or who's giving money to South Florida. But at any rate, you're going to use Foundation Directory Online Professional, and the profile that we provide to you will tell you who the top staff members are. and I also double check myself, I will go to a tax return, an IRS 990 PF, PF standing for private foundations, and I will check that tax return to see if it says there are no hired help on the team, or if there is an executive director, and I forgot to pick it up in our FDO profile, that tax return is going to tell me who the top hired help is. It'll give me their name and their job title. So that's one easy way to figure out if they have staff members.
So the Foundation Directory Online.
Foundation Directory Online Professional is your tool.
And the 990.
And the 990, the 990 PF.
It looks like we have
in case they
question.
don't have a website.
If there's a
There's a website, it makes part of your research easier.
We know a large percentage don't have websites. All right, now
Yep.
we're gonna continue.
90% of foundations
let's go
don't
right
have
up front
website.
here. Yes, just a minute. Wait for the microphone, please. Just wait for the microphone, please. There we go.
First of all, I am very happy to see that this on the non-profit radio
Great.
exists. I'm coming to a foundation center for a long time, and I established a very good relationship with the Susan Shiroma.
Keep the mic close.
So
So we can hear you.
with the Susan Shiroma.
Yeah.
You see, Sandy destroyed everything, and it's very hard to reestablish it and continues what we like to do the most. And Susan was helping us to right. And my question comes to Stuart, right? My agency was serving Queens and Brooklyn, a Russian community. So can we come to you to see if you can support us?
Well, let's not even put Stuart on the spot. Why don't you talk privately after? Okay, let's not even put Stuart on the spot to answer that question.
And
let's you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
Something. Even though 77%, I learned this today, 77% of private foundations don't accept unsolicited requests, and we are among that 77%. But on our website, and we do have a website, I very, very intentionally put my email address on the website because people might want to reach out. And again, things have come in over the transom all of the time, and unless something is just plainly a dear occupant sales pitch on how I can raise more money, not in a fundraising organization, if it's a legitimate funding request, I'm going to respond to that.
Awesome. Very gracious. Let's go in the back. Ma'am?
Yes. Say you find out that through research that one of your board members does have a contact with the board of a foundation to which you want to apply. What is the best way to leverage that contact?
I can only speak for our foundation, and again, I feel if there's a staff, it's always appropriate to go through the staff first. And there might almost be a sense that like you're trying to cut in line ahead of where you should be. The appropriate chain of communications is go to the staff. And I wonder if you go to a board person, if that might, sort of bite you in the butt.
All right, so we're getting some different answers.
And I just wanted to assure you, from a Foundation Center perspective, if you take any of our classes on fundraising, that is one of the things we're definitely going to tell you. That when you were having one of your board members go above the program officer's head to another board member, you have to counsel your board member to be very careful in their conversation with the foundation's board. So if they have paid staff, like program officers, that the program officer doesn't feel like you've gone above their head. So if you're dealing with a foundation that has very direct application procedures, just follow them and use that board contact, lightly. You don't want to tick anybody off.
All right.
Actually, staff should be looked at as a firewall. The reason why a family foundation oftentimes wants a staff person is to prevent being bombarded with requests and having potentially uncomfortable conversations. With me, it's never going to be an uncomfortable conversation because it's my job.
That's why
I'm
you're
going to
there.
be a straight shooter. It's either potential fit, tell me more, or that's not at all what we do. Good luck with your fundraising efforts.
Anything else online?
Yes.
Okay, who's it from?
The Big Children's Foundation is asking if you are reaching out to a foundation for the first time and you discover there's a fit in mission and in funding focus, is there a right amount to ask for?
Susan, why don't you take that?
Okay, so if that person was dealing with me in one of my conversations, I would ask them if they had done their research. Have they used Foundation Directory Online Professional to look at the size of grant paid out to nonprofits that do what they do? You always have to make the right ask. So we need to essentially go through the last 3 years of the grants list of that foundation and try to figure out what the amount size is going to nonprofits that are in your type of category and size range.
Okay.
The research is going to help you with that.
Okay.
I would argue, don't talk about money at all. Have the conversation first to see if it's a fit. Never send an with us, I don't want to get a letter of inquiry, and to me that feels like someone who hasn't really done their homework. I'm much more receptive to, hey, we do this, you do this, could we meet for coffee? Could we set up a phone call? Could we get together to talk about it? And in the conversation, I can talk about the kind of things we like to do with our grants and hear about what your needs are and then have that conversation to see if it's a fit. But when I get just a letter of inquiry, an unsolicited letter of inquiry, it's very rare that that's a fit because they never took the time to have that conversation, which I'm very receptive
There's no relationship.
to having. There's no relationship.
We spent all this time talking about relationships,
Yeah.
and right out of the box, you're asking me for money.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Can we have $50,000?
Yeah, but
What are the odds that that's going to succeed?
But if somebody reached out and said, I'd love to sit down to talk to you about the potential of getting a grant from you, that's
Right.
totally appropriate.
We have more questions. Let's go over here.
This question is both for Danielle and for Stuart. So you kind of spoke about continuing that relationship even if you get a no response, and I'm just curious in your experiences if it would ever be appropriate to kind of approach a family foundation and say, you know, this isn't a great fit, but could you recommend other foundations that you might know of that might be a good fit? Is that kind of a conversation that one might have?
I ask that question all the time.
Okay, I'm going to actually we're running a little out of time and there's lots of questions. So Danielle, you want to take that?
Say yes, I ask that question all the time of any funder.
And Stuart is nodding. So
he's done that.
Stuart is nodding. If you're
Value
only
added.
listening to the audio, Stuart is nodding.
We're really
So
big on value added, and that's what I'm trying to do.
let's go over here and sing right up front. Use your mic. Yeah.
Sort of like the previous question, but if a foundation says they give a one-time grant only, and you're talking about a relationship, should you just forget about that? Or
Well, that's a great question. If it says one time only, and you got funded, what would you do, Danielle?
From my perspective, I'm the kind of person I always feel like someone's always in the extended family. So you don't know where that relationship is going to lead. So just like her question, they might recommend someone else who can sustain that funding. They can connect you to other partners. They can connect you to other grants.
So if you're going to reach out to them again, would you?
Well, I would check to make sure that you could. Like, use your relationship and ask them, you know, it's been about 2 or 3 years since you funded us. I know you're one time. Could we propose a different program? Would that be a better fit? Or would you mind if we, you know, do you think it would be a good idea for us to submit for the same programming again? We have this gap. And then leave it up to them to say, no, that's not going to work. They're still in your extended family. You don't know where it's going to lead. You really don't.
Funders of people have an honest conversation with them.
Yeah.
I think we just have time for one more question. You got your shot. Let's see if there's anybody else. Anybody? Okay, give him a second. Third. This is third question. Because you had 2 the first time. Second time, third question.
I'll keep it
what a
quick.
bonus.
And this has been great. Very quick question. I want to make sure I have clarity on this, that you're saying my phone call to you to introduce myself actually this is instead of an LOI. So if you like what we do, we would jump right to the proposal stage. Am I understanding that correctly?
We'd be having a conversation.
Yeah,
and we just had
Conversation.
Danielle started her job, 2 months ago? Mm-hmm. And I knew that I would hear from her. I knew that she was moving on. Her last gig, and this was she went from the initial organization, to a second organization, and we were one of the first funders, and it was a
Yes.
real home run, and we were extraordinarily proud of a program that we really helped to
kick off.
To kick off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very real sort of pride of ownership, if you will. And and we had a relationship, and I knew that I would be hearing from Danielle, and from what I had heard about the organization, it didn't sound like it was a fit for us, frankly, but this is a friend. This is somebody who I like. It's not somebody who I can say, no, I won't meet with you. Of course I met with her. But as we talked, it was the real sort of creativity of over coffee, and I'd ridden my bike there. I was in shorts and a t-shirt. And when it's informal like that, you can just have a really relaxed conversation.
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, not in Queens. And it was an enormously sort of creative, fun conversation where I quickly picked up on what Danielle's needs were, and she understood what our sort of sweet spot is. And I really think there's a great grant for us to help develop a college access program among the high school kids who are currently getting paid.
It's all, I have to stop you there. It's all the relationship.
It's all in the relationship.
It's a relationship.
And having an honest conversation.
There's a takeaway. That's it. Okay. It's time for the giveaways. Get your phones. Get your phone, whether, of course, live stream or here in the audience. You're getting a copy of this book, Braided Threads. Braided Threads, a historical overview of the American nonprofit sector. Here's the number you're going to text to. 252, which is a North Carolina area code, in case you're wondering. Not too far from where the hurricane just hit. Actually, right where the hurricane did just hit. 252-515-7987. The book Braided Threads is by Dr. Robert Penna. It's as I said, it's in the title, a historical overview. Answers questions like, how did we get to where we are? How did we evolve through history? It's not strictly chronological. He was on the show talking about it just last month. It's not strictly chronological, but if you're interested in how we became what we are as a community, he starts with Queen Elizabeth I. All right? So you got the number. You got 252-515-7987. You got it? Okay, first 5 people to text are going to win, and you text family. Family. That's it. Okay, we're moving on. Next week, it's Foundation Center Month on Nonprofit Radio. We're going to wrap it up with grant decision making, using disaster philanthropy as our example. We'll find out what the ingredients are and how the sausage gets made inside foundations. Join me again in thanking our panel for today, Susan Shiroma, Stuart Post, and Danielle Guindo. Awesome. Thank you very much. If you missed any part of today's show, I beseech you, find it on TonyMartignetti.com. We're sponsored by Pursuant, online tools for small and mid-sized nonprofits, data-driven and technology-enabled. Tony.ma/Pursuant, capital P. Wegner CPAs, guiding you beyond the numbers, WegnerCPAs.com. By Telos, credit card and payment processing, your passive revenue stream. Tony.ma/TonyTelos. And by Text to Give, mobile donations made easy. Here's another text opportunity. NPR to 444-999. Our creative producer is Claire Meyerhoff. The show's social media is by Susan Chavez. Mark Silverman in the audience is our web guy. And this music is by Scott Stein of Brooklyn. Many thanks to Tracy Kaufman, Susan Shiroma, and William Lee here at the Foundation Center. Thank you so much. You're with me next week for Nonprofit Radio, big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. Go out and be great. Thank you so much.